All right, what's going on, everyone? Thanks for joining us on our 25th episode of the Retic Lounge. I can't believe it's already been 25 weeks straight, or actually 26 considering our intro, that we've been bringing this content to you guys. It's been a pleasure doing so. Like always, thanks for the
Pretty fucking
support.
wild.
Yeah, yeah. And let me tell you, man, trying to get scheduled when Nathan's busy, I'm busy. It's a pain, but it's been worth it. You guys have been awesome. So really appreciate all the support and feedback that you've given us, both good and constructive. It's been great. We've learned a lot from our listeners on how we can improve, and we're going to be doing our best in 2023 to definitely go that way. So, of course, don't forget, if you're on YouTube watching this, like, subscribe, and comment. And as well, we're on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And then you can see in our new banner below, join our Patreon, get some backseat access, some extra content, as well as joining a Discord that is almost up to 50 people now. Very lively, fun Discord. We just had our Discord live last night. Was a great time hanging out. So, Nathan, what else you got?
Yeah, just make sure that you're supporting USARC. Make sure you're taking any steps necessary when they send out their alerts. And yeah, just keep those member numbers up. Donate when you possibly can.
Yeah, we are very excited to announce in our quarter century episode, we are doing our second episode of our Locality Talk. We are going to be talking all about Malukus. And just like we promised when we did our first one with Eric Lee, our Locality Talks are going to have guests. And of course, it would be ridiculous to have anybody else on talking about Malukus other than Rodney Boalich with RNB Reptiles. So we are extremely excited to have him on talking about Ternates, Halmaheras, and he's probably going to give us a bunch of other localities that he has some data and information on. But before we bring him in, let's go ahead and get a word from our sponsors. Whether you're just getting into retics or you've been breeding for years, the first place you want to visit is Stewart Design. More and more breeders keep showing up at shows, on Morph Market, and all over socials. Sometimes it may feel impossible to get anyone's attention. Stewart Design helps small businesses like yours do big things through brand clarity, helping entrepreneurs to start and scale businesses that are easy to know and love. Their work can help any company or industry, but they've done a ton of work for ours. Stewart Design created the brand for US Arcs, Canova, Reach Out Reptiles, Coiled, and dozens of other well-known reptile breeders. Like many of us, the owner of Stewart Design, Blake, is a keeper and breeder who fell in love with retics. Although Stewart Design does a lot of corporate work, Blake has a passion for working with people in the reptile industry. So, wondering if Stewart Design is right for you? Stewart Design can help if you're just getting started or you're ready to take things to the next level. Maybe you're struggling to stand out and build your presence online or at shows. And maybe you don't want to be like the other guys or get lost in the crowd. You want to make your own way doing what you love. You might just have a big idea and know your business is special, but you need help sharing it with the reptile community. If something here resonates with you, reach out to Blake. Have a conversation with him. To learn more or get started, visit sdidentity.com or call them at 855 SD Logos. Clear brand, own markets, Stewart Design helps create them.
All right, guys, visit VivTechProducts.com and use our affiliate code for 15% off Retic Lounge 23. So visit VivTech Products for all of your UV needs and use our affiliate code Retic Lounge 23 for 15% off today.
Yeah, I'm excited. I get to start the second series, second phase of that research that I'm doing with their products. So I'm going to be turning on that light bulb in just 3 days. So I'm excited to see how that goes. Anyways, let's go ahead and bring Rodney into the discussion here. And Rodney, what's going on, man?
Nothing. Just breeding snakes like usual.
Breeding snakes like usual. The daily grind, man.
Yeah, that's about it. Yeah, well, I'm not really breeding too much this year. I'm kind of keeping it down because of recession issues. So I don't want to. I don't want to shoot myself in the foot with overproduction this time of year. Well, in this economic climate, so I'm kind of.
Yeah.
I'm breeding about 50% of what I normally would.
Yeah. I started taking on people for people sending me their babies throughout this recession, so it's really going to test my time and my patience. So it's going to be fun selling others animals. But anyways, Rodney, introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about R&B Reptiles and what you're doing and all that good stuff.
Well, I actually started R&B Reptiles because I'd been keeping snakes for so long, and I really just started breeding snakes to pay for snakes. So I've never actually taken that business as serious as I should. But I've had reptiles since I was 5, and when I was early 20s, and I'm like, well, maybe I should start breeding snakes because I have all these snakes. So that's actually how that started. It just, I was a collector before I was a breeder, and I had snakes for 15 plus years before I even started breeding them. And
What
then
was your first species?
of snake, it was a ball python I got in 3rd grade. Before that, that was my first snake. Then I had before that at like 5, I had like little turtles, an iguana. A 5-year-old shouldn't have an iguana, but I had one.
I did
Uh,
too.
yeah,
Yeah, no,
like
I was the same way, and
it
it
was
was probably like the strictly reptile days,
yeah, like
just
well,
imported everywhere around the country.
yeah, back in the 80s, early 90s, because I would have been like 87-ish. When I was like, oh, I got my first iguana, I'm 5. Here's this, 2.5 foot snake or a 2.5 foot lizard in a 10-gallon cage, and with a 5-year-old.
Right.
It's a horrible, horrible idea.
Yeah. Yeah. I
But
mean,
yeah, that's how that started.
and even even me keeping reptiles in the 90s, all the screwed up shit that we would do with keeping them on heat rocks and all that, like literally
Mm.
just that those primitive days of keeping reptiles at a young age was really ridiculous because our parents didn't know any better.
Do they still make heat rocks?
I wouldn't be surprised. I haven't seen them
I
at the
hope
pet
so.
stores.
I hope so. 'Cause, like they were like
The
200
cynical.
degrees, just like fire hazard. Ugh.
Oh yeah.
I'm sure if they sell them on the label, it says does not work with thermostat.
Or yeah, just
And if
yeah.
you're 30 years old or above, you've definitely had one if you had
Oh
reptiles
yeah,
in your
Yeah,
yeah.
don't
family.
If
lie.
you before you found out about like reptile shows and stuff, your local pet store, that was it.
Yeah.
You know,
Yep.
and
Oh
they
yeah.
and they were on their game,
Yeah.
with the aquarium and the heat rock that got 190 degrees, and
Yeah. I
your
had
imported whatever.
right. I had a boa when I was like 8, was when I got my first boa, and I had a heat rock in there, and it actually shattered the glass aquarium on the bottom
Oh,
below
did
it.
it? Heat,
Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
one
heated
day
up.
I went to take it off to clean the enclosure, and the bottom of the enclosure was like cracked. I was like, "You got to be kidding me!"
Yeah. Yeah, if it wasn't tempered, yeah, it would eventually
Yeah,
do some damage.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're here to talk about mostly Ternates and Halmaheras because I know you work pretty heavily with them. There's probably no one else in the country that we could have on qualified to even talk about these localities. So, what like got you even into the idea of importing this locality?
Uh, I got my first retic when I was 19. It was a wild caught yellowhead, and it was a complete asshole. I ended up selling it, and then when I was 22, I bought a pair of retics. Most of the new people aren't going to remember this. The old sharp line, they were Posset sharp line albino. It's like non-existent. I think it was sharp line. So I don't know. It was something. It was some old line of albino. It was basically a white face.
And it,
It's like
yeah,
non-existent.
it looks like a Clark white phase, but it's not compatible.
No, it's nicer.
Yeah,
Like there was only a handful of them still around, like 10, 12 years ago, and they were nice. I'm not a big white face person, but they were very nice. They had really nice contrast. I believe they were out of Malaysia. And I had those. I got those snakes. And uh, the female got pretty large. She got up to 18 feet pretty quickly. And she was actually the friendliest retic to this day I've ever had. She was like dog tame, like scary dog tame. But then I started getting into some more localities. Well, I got a Clark strain. I got a Clark strain albino. I paid $2,500 for it. To give you an idea, it was a while ago.
man.
So, and that was third party. Yeah, so I got it cheaper than it would have been to buy it straight from Bob. Uh, and I bred the male because I didn't realize that I had two different lines of albinos, and I bred the posset from a different line to that female, or no, to my albino lavender, and it threw in, like, I didn't get anything. It was just like all pos double heads. But then I'd bred a purple to that giant female, and it threw visual uh, animals. I was like, this doesn't even work. But it was kinked up. I don't know. It was some kind of genetic mess. There was a albino paradox in it, and that snake, she ended up. What did she throw? She threw three or four twins that clutch.
Oh, cool.
Her second clutch, I bred
Wow.
her. Um, she, out of 15 eggs, there was 5 sets of twins. And the one year she did throw triplets. It was the only time I ever hatched out triplets was from this snake. And it was, it was an interesting snake. I don't know what was going on genetically with it, but she genetically produced multiple snakes in one egg. Um, After that, there's a pet store about 30 minutes away that was getting in cheap retics at the time. And that's actually where I'd got my first super dwarf stuff. This pet store was getting in super dwarfs. And one of the dudes that worked there, Brian, he actually had bought them up and he was moving. So he sold them to me. This was like 2006. And I got a Kaiwadi off him, a pair of Kalatoas. Uh, and that pair of Kalatoas is the produced the F1s that Chris Wilson's working with.
Oh, nice. Yeah, that super aberrant pattern.
Yeah,
Nice.
yeah. So that was them, and I was working with that stuff, and I'd got some Solayers in and that kind of stuff. And then 2010, somebody posted a picture on Facebook of a Ternate, and I was like, "What is that?" And by 2013, I'd started getting them in.
Yeah.
So and I had a lot of localities. Like the height of my locality collection, I had a lot. I had Malaysians, Sumatran, Java, Bali, Ambon, Siam, Solaire, Sulawesi, Bhutan, uh, Karampa, Kalatoa, Madu, Jamp, Kaiwadi, Halma, Ternate, in Philippines. I think I had all of those.
I just counted 18. That's insane.
Yeah, that was the height of my
You ever
localities.
you ever get your hands or see in person at Borneo?
I had I had one snake that I could. Well, I had two that were possible Borneos, but I never got them in. The reason I never got them in was they were actually kind of pricey, and I'm like, they're, there's no reason. They were just, for some reason, they were just more money, and I'm like,
Can
and
you
there
give
was
us an idea of what price he was back in that day?
$200.
Jeez.
That's exactly why I asked that question.
I
I
mean,
knew
Yeah.
it'd be something ridiculous.
Well, that's why I didn't get it. I
even
was like,
prices have been ridiculous just within the last 6-7 years. I mean, that's really the big price increase that we've seen with the locality stuff. I don't know if you would agree, Rodney.
well, that's only because we can't get them imported. Like I was
Yeah.
paying,
Yeah.
like they wanted $200 for Borneos, but they were charging me $200 for a Calato. I'm like, if I'm giving you $200 for a Calato, I'm not giving you $200 for a Borneo. I should be giving you $50 because it's right next to Sumatra. So that was so I never paid for it. And then I have to take 10 or 20 at a clip, and I'm like, well, who the hell's going to want Borneos? Nobody wanted them. So nobody wanted most of this stuff back then anyway. So,
Yeah.
but I had to cut the collection down because I knew we were going to lose interstate commerce. So I made the decision to sell off a lot of my localities, and I even sold off some Ternates. But then I bought them all back in 2016. I sold off a couple pairs, but then I ended up buying them back at like 10 times the price I originally paid for them. But
Yeah. Do you mind if I want you know more, so like when we talked about the previous locality talk that we did with Kalatoa, I kind of went into where Kalatoa is, all that stuff. Do you mind actually going into, since this is going to be titled Maluku, do you mind going into where in Indonesia Maluku is versus like the more commonly known islands, and go into that whole geographic?
well, there's like, sometimes when you talk about Malukus, they talk about a really large portion of island chains that's like It's in between the Weber. It's in the Weber line because there's Wallace line that runs in between Borneo and Sula, and then the next section of line, like of those islands, that's Weber line. So they're all in the Weber line.
So
Um,
I talked to you. I've seen your video on the
the,
Weber line, and
yeah,
so can you go into a
it
little detail about that?
yeah it's a group of islands north east of Sulawesi. And then there's like the central Malukus that are like right there. And that's actually something I wanted to talk about because one section of the Maluku Islands is actually called the Sola Islands. It's oh man, how do you say these names? There's Sananza, there's another one, it's like Mongoli, and then there's Taliabu or Tali Taliabu or so I can't say it. But those are the only group of islands from the Malukus that are still in the Wallace line, and they're very close to Sulawesi. They're like right off the east coast, but those snakes actually carry the same look and traits as the rest of the Malukus. And by Malukus, I mean from the central up to Halmahera and Morarate. Because once you get to the Banda Arc, then you get into, Ambon, the Moluccans, the Southerns, Ambon, Siram, and that group. But yeah, I will show you. Where's it at? Here's a Sananza, a Sanana. Some of these words are kind of strange. But this is one of the nicest ones out of those centrals that I've ever seen.
Did you send that over Facebook?
Yeah. And then where's another one? But
Let's
they have a very, you can tell they're within the same evolutionary track as the Ternates Halmaheras. But
Nathan, did you get it?
yeah, I just hit send.
Oh, cool. Okay.
This was a more of a darker, a thicker black, more of a silver phase, and then you get more into the darker red phase, like you're seeing, and some of the other stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, did that come through?
Yeah, I got it here. And what we're for those of you just listening on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify, you won't be able to see this. So this is a good opportunity for you guys to learn. Go to our YouTube so you can actually see the images that he's sending over that we're going to include in the video. So I have a question for you. So I know that there is this, with the spreading of islands, and there's a part of Maluku animals that there's sulas oftentimes will have these donut patterns along their neck and towards their striping. They'll have the chainsaw as well, but I also notice in some of the Ternates and Halmaheras, they have the tendency for some of them to also have that donut like pattern. And do you think that that's because there's part of that Maluku region that's still northern part of the Sula chain?
I kind of think that the Malukus are basically like the missing link between Philippines and Saputrii.
Okay.
So you know what I mean. So you kind of like, because I have a feeling if you take a Sola and breed it to a Phil, you're going to get a very northern Maluku looking animal. Just like when you look at the southern Malukus, the Moluccans, you look at an Ambon or a Siram, and it's basically if you took a Sulawesi and bred it to anything out of the Lesser Sundas. You
Okay.
know, because I mean they definitely have that look, of just combined traits. And one study they did do, and I can't remember which paper it was, they did do some genetic testing on Phils and some Halmas, and it looked like the Halmas were actually closer genetically to the Phils.
Okay.
So I do think as far as back pattern goes, there's so much variation across the board. I don't know if that's even, I don't know if back pattern is even relevant in terms of locality um, relation to other island groups because there's so many polygenic possible lineups, and I just think you're kind of seeing what works if for a survival type pattern and hiding in that kind of situation.
Gotcha. And yeah, I feel like that's a fair statement. Um, so let's talk about, so when did Ternates and Halmaheras get into the U.S.?
2013.
Um,
Now, Halma's had came in before that, but very few and nobody was really kind of like paying attention. They, and well, you have them, so you know how amazingly friendly the Halmas are. You know what I mean? So there wasn't a demand it's like they get in this dark snake that just wants to bite you. Like nobody wants that.
Yeah. I mean, my male is a freaking angel, dude. My male, I can like go in and just grab it, but my female wants to eat me, and
Yeah,
she's like as thin as my pinky.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, they're fun, but um, well, I'll post up a picture of a Homa, or Rodney, if you want to send me one too, while I'm talking about this. But one thing that I love about the Halmaheras is just how dark they are. There's no other locality out there that's really like that. They have like this black look that is like an undertone with these dark chocolate and orange fixtures that go along the dorsal pattern with some pretty deep reds. I don't. You could tell me if I'm off with this or not, Rodney, but there's something that if you look at a Halmahera, even if you look at a Halmahera next to a Ternate, which they're pretty
yeah,
close together, they're substantially different.
yeah, yeah, and it's pretty noticeable. It's a lot easier to tell in person. I jumped on my website. Let me I don't think I can drag this image. Um, I'll just copy it and send it to you real quick. Um, yeah, but there is some variation in those. I mean, that's your standard like super dark Saputria, like next level, darkness from Saputrii. But it's
I don't know, man. I've seen some pretty dark Solayers in person, and they're still
yeah, they still they're
so
still
Solayers have like an orange undertone with their darkness. You can see the red blushing coming in through their where their dorsal pattern isn't, but where there's not color, in my opinion, where there's not color in Halmaheras, it just looks black.
yeah, yeah. I mean, they basically have this kind of here's a pretty classic looking. I just sent you on Facebook, a pretty classic
Mhm.
looking Halma. I forget what region that was out of. It starts with a T. Now there is some other ones that are a little lighter color, and I have to look through these pictures until I find it. But there's a little more variation than you realize. But I think there's still uh, a lot more variation on Ternate, which is strange because it's
A
like
smaller island.
yeah, it's like less than 100 miles, 100 square miles, and Halmahera is like 6,000. So it's kind of strange that there's that much of a variation on such a small island. Yet we're not, from what we've seen, we just haven't seen that much variation out of Halmahera. The one thing I've noticed though on them is they do have a different egg size and a different hatchling size. So Halma egg is typically 200, just a little over, where a ternate egg is typically about 180 grams.
Okay.
And and those Halma hatchlings, they're typically like 150 to 180, and those ternates they're. I've had some. My smallest that wasn't like a straight runt was 86 grams. Then my largest was 132 grams.
Oh, that's a good sized baby.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So there's definitely a range, but there's still that environmental factor on
Within
embryo
the egg
development.
box.
So it could sometimes you have bigger babies, but if you incubate a degree or two colder, have a little extra moisture in there, you get a much larger baby than you do at
Yeah.
2 degrees warmer and less humidity. And I don't
Yeah.
think people, and that's the one thing that I'm seeing right now with this my bloodline smaller than your bloodline craze is this
Mhm.
this hatchling size, thinking it's going to tell you more than it really will about overall potential growth.
So
Oh
speaking
no,
of
I've seen
potential,
a wide range even within my first clutch of hatchling sizes.
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
and
yeah.
yeah, and that's the thing. And if you mess with temps and mess with humidity, you can make them really small or you can make them really big.
Yeah, and what's crazy is that like I remember there was a single egg from my Coyote clutch. This last Coyote clutch that I had, or my only Coyote clutch, but there was one egg that was on the top that I put there intentionally that was a lot, like visually a lot smaller, and weighed a lot less. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but than the other eggs, and I left it on top because I intentionally wanted to see what the baby was going to look like versus all the other ones.
Yeah.
That baby absorbed everything and was bigger than probably half the clutch.
Yeah, yeah, and you still see that variation in egg size.
Yeah.
One thing that I saw in Super Dorse that I've never seen in another retic was like oversized eggs. Like that clutch of like we're like those F1s that Chris Wilson's working with, for example. I only got one clutch out of that snake, and that's because she got egg bound. She laid 12 good normal size super dwarf eggs, and then got impacted with these like giant, like for some reason she got 5 eggs that were over twice the size of the rest of the clutch.
Oh,
And yeah, so I mean, I have no idea what caused that. I don't know if that was like a half reabsorbed follicle that got reshelled the next season. You know what I mean? So I really don't know what that was, but I have seen a pretty big swing in Superdorf production, of an egg being, 2.5 times the size that it should be.
yeah,
And that doesn't help when they already have all those egg bound issues.
yeah. And just as a reference for you guys, so he was talking about these ternate eggs being what size? 180 grams.
180 to 2.
Yeah. So my average weight for my Kalatoa on 2 out of the 3 years that she's laid for me has been 92 grams. Um, but and that's, I think it's a good point that I want to talk over. You originally had, or you've worked with a long time, what was it, 6 points, so 11 wild caught Halmaheras, or I'm
Ternates.
sorry, Ternates. Let's talk about the size of Ternates and size expectations and what we're seeing in your wild caught animals, and then your F1s, and now you have F2s that just hatch. And so, because I know a lot of people are like, there's this idea of like, are Ternates quote unquote dwarf? Are we going to label them a marketing term of dwarf? What's their size potential and range that we've seen so far in the U.S.?
Yeah,
Well,
that was kind of. Oh, go ahead. Go
no,
ahead.
go ahead. Go ahead. You're good.
No, I was just gonna say I kind of wanted you just to give an overall sales pitch of Ternate or Ternate, however you decide to pronounce it. But I know for me, size is huge. I
That's what she said.
can't deal with more. Well, I can't deal with more than what I can deal with on my own. I don't have someone else here, so like the color alone, I think sells most people. But what else about Ternates makes them so great, and why should people be keeping them more?
Yeah.
Well, I'll talk about the size first. I didn't when I started. I saw a picture of one, and I didn't care if it got 3 feet or 30 feet. I didn't care. I
Yeah,
was
yeah.
like, I saw the color and I saw the pattern. I was like, well, this is what I want. And
I had back surgery. That's why I care.
yeah, yeah, I get that. So, I honestly didn't know. I got a bunch of them in, and I looked up the island, and it was small, and I talked to the people on the island, and they said, well, we found a couple, but that were large, but they're always like next to like a village or a farm, and they're eating, big stuff. But I pushed mine pretty hard. I got one female, probably 13 and a half feet. The next largest is she's probably 12, then it just tapers off from there.
Well, and we've talked about this in one of our last episodes, size expectations, but what's body composition like? Like on that 13-foot female that you got as big
They're
as you could,
they're
how
built more
heavy?
they're built more like a Saputri versus like a southern Philippine. Like a southern Philippine, they're super skinny snakes. Like Malaysians are typically pretty thin. They're definitely a heavier body composition. And I had to back off, on some food on mine because they were starting to get a little too thick because the growth had basically is shut down. But I would say your average size of a ternate is going to be in that 9 to 12 range. I'm not going to pretend like they're going to stay 6 feet. But the thing for me is
Yeah,
they fit in a 6 foot cage, and that's what I want to produce. I want to produce because people have easy access to 6 footers.
yeah,
And an 11 foot snake does fit relatively well in a 6 foot cage,
Yeah.
especially if it's 3 feet deep.
Yeah. And
oh yeah,
I will say that my female from Clutch 6, that Rodney did, was from a smaller pairing, and I've been pushing my female really hard. I've talked to you about this, Nathan. I've been pushing her hard, and she is going to be 4 years old in June, and she's 7.5 feet. Um, I can't. I've been pushing her.
Yeah, and that's pretty much what I'm seeing. I'm seeing a rather it's pretty easy to get them up to 6 feet, but to get them to that get them to like 8, 9 foot mark where you kind of want them for breeding, it takes a lot of food. It take you know it's and that's what I was like, well, based on what I've seen off of 11 wild caught adults, um, and based off what I'm seeing off of all those F1 clutches, they fall in the range of a dwarf, which is completely relative because it's like, oh, it's dwarf, it stays under 14 feet. So there's a relativity of it. But, I mean, I've seen a lot more jams, a lot bigger than my largest ternate. So
And
that's,
Soleil's a
Yeah.
whole
No,
different
I've seen
story
some
too.
huge jams, huge Solayers. Like,
yeah,
yeah, it's
it's a
all
retic.
very relative. Well, and that's all
Yeah,
why I specifically only work with Kalatoa crosses right now, is because I can count on them at least being small.
yeah, yeah. And I mean, I would put, well, right now my F1s aren't that big because they're not that old, like the breeders, but they're all like super dwarf size, of like female super dwarf size right now. Like, I just had an 8 footer drop 10 eggs. So like at 4 years old, you're going to be having a super dwarf size animal. At 15, probably not.
Yeah.
And even
Yeah.
a 15-year-old Calato is probably gonna be a little bigger than you might expect.
Yeah, and I
Well,
mean,
and I'd hope in 15 years I'd be a little bit more apt to have something a little bit bigger.
Yeah.
Experience will
Yeah, I
help me
mean,
grow.
to me, the main selling point on the Ternates, besides their manageable size, because I consider them a manageable size snake,
right.
um, it's well, there's two things. One, the sustainability of them, because we're at 12 F1 clutches produced from 5.5 wild caught. So, they're as of
That's a
right
hell of a
now.
lot of diversity.
Yeah, yeah, as of right now, they're probably the most sustainable locality, as it sits right now. But I can't, I can't find a retic that competes in color and pattern.
And that's
So
that's
on that note, what do you think, if someone were to cross a ternate into something, what would be the best project to cross it in?
yes,
Probably, we talking locale, or we talking morph?
both.
Locale and morph. I know you've done a little bit of both. Your ternate marbles were some of my favorite marbles I've ever seen in my life. So
I
yeah,
would say any super dwarf is going to be a good cross. And the more aberrant pattern super dwarf, the better.
just
That
bring more color too.
Yeah. Yeah, so you're gonna lose a little color, you're gonna lose a little black, but you're also gonna lose a little size, and I think that's an acceptable loss, because
Right.
I just got that clutch. I just redid the same breeding with the Andrews male and I used the largest ternate I have because I was like, well, I kind of, she's only 13 feet or so. So, if I shave 2 feet off of that, that's, in my opinion, 10, 11 foot females, that's like the perfect size breeder. So I got
Yeah.
that clutch in the incubator, which is more than 5 good eggs this year, thankfully. Um, but, yeah, I think Super Dwarf for sure. Everybody, for some reason, wants me to do a Ternate Sulawesi cross, which I'm sure will look nice, but I don't, you know what I mean? It's, I don't, that's a whole different
I kind of
conversation.
I'm with you on that.
You have a
It would be cool, but I don't see the point.
you have a
Yeah.
male at your disposal.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm way more concerned about trying to make a clutch of pure solas first,
Right.
that's kind of like goal one, since I think this is the last potential new bloodline here at my house. I don't think there's any other like bloodlines that haven't already produced out there for solo Essies, that is. Not
Nope.
that I know of. I
No, and
mean,
I've
I'm
I've
sure there's some somewhere in some random dude's basement that we don't know
right.
about.
I've talked to a lot of the Sula people that are Sula fanatics, and a lot of them are very much aware of your wild caught pair and just playing the waiting game.
She dropped the clutch of slugs 2 seasons ago, and it really took it out of her. I was surprised. And then she just went off food. last week. And they locked up once so far. So
Oh,
so
that's huge progress.
yeah, yeah. Solos are a little tougher to breed than other localities. But uh, but yeah.
Well,
But back to the ternates though. A morse. Um, that's a little tricky because I was fortunate enough to get so many ternates that I kind of wasn't locked into like one set of genetic like phenotype expression. So I've been able to mix and match for back pattern, side pattern, colors, all of that stuff. So um, it pretty much any morph, as long as you use the right ternate.
so hear me out.
Offhand, do you have a picture of maybe your favorite expression of Ternate?
Uh,
I could put my mail up on here. I feel like Rodney sold me this mail when he was over a year old, and I'll put up my mail against any one of his ternates.
I have, I have. Where's it at? You know what? It's on my.
While you're looking for it and you're sending me the picture for me to add, I will also drop a picture of my male ternate who has just the sickest pattern.
Let me see. I don't think I can pull this off of here. It's right on my website. It's like a big picture. He's on this log, and he's averaging 2 to 3 scales thick of black, real jagged pattern. That's
Is
what
that
I
your
like.
floating log setup?
Yeah. This is an old pick. He was just breeding. This was like he was less than a year old in this pick, I think. But no, he was just locked up about a month ago with a snake. I'm waiting on his clutch. I'm hoping this works because the whole reason I did that breeding was he had some pretty thick, jagged back pattern. He had a lot of connecting black that connected from the back diamonds around the white to the belly scale, and the female I ran him to has a very similar structure. So I'm hoping if this breeding goes through, it will produce a retic that has the most black scales on it ever produced in captivity. Because they both got black bellies. They have a lot of black that connects, the whole way from the back diamond through the white down to the belly scale. So that's what I'm trying to do. And then once
Okay.
I do that, then take it into T positives to get all that crazy contrast.
Like endos.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Take it into endos.
I
So
hear me out. Let me play devil's advocate here. I want to hear your thoughts because you understand polygenic traits pretty well. You talk a lot about them on your Patreon, and you also are very active on Facebook in regards to talking about just not breeding the same status quo animal and trying to specifically do polygenic traits. But so let's talk about the morph phantom. When you think about a phantom, it reduces a lot of pattern and it brings it all the way up to the top. What are
yeah,
your thoughts on taking a crazy busy animal like a ternate and seeing if we can manipulate pattern to be a lot more complex and busy while also and so phantoms tend to have outside of putting a phantom to like a Calatoa, phantoms are very vibrant morphs. So
yeah.
adding the ternate color and maybe that crazy pattern to see what happens along the back.
Well, I already did that.
Oh, that's right. You did. I was thinking I was
Yeah.
thinking you only did that with the Philippines.
No, no. I have what I consider probably to be the nicest phantom in existence sitting downstairs, and it is
Picture of
fifth.
that, please.
Uh, yeah. Let me. I'll have to. What I. You know what? I just took. Let me see if it's on my phone. I think I just took a picture of it. Um, it is 50% ternate, 12.5 jam, 12.5 Medu, and 6.25 Calatoa.
Oh, that's a great mix.
Yeah, so
Right.
it's not like it's just like I mean
There's some there's
it
some breeders out there making the claim that a bunch of different localities is pointless, but I
is it
won't
would
go
it
into
be would
that.
it be the same breeders that doesn't have the snakes to do it? Because sometimes when you don't have the ability to do something, it seems like a bad idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know
But
why you would think that though. Like I don't understand. Like I just did a breeding that most people are going to think is stupid. I just bred a ternate to a Philippine, and no one's going to understand why I did that.
I had thoughts on doing that with the Philippines I have here. Why not?
Yeah, I don't know where that picture went, but I mean, what I'll do is after this, I'll send you a picture. You can plug it in. But
Yeah,
no, I
yeah, we
mean,
can always do it in post.
yeah, and the Phantom fills are gorgeous too. Like
Yeah.
they're they're the same. They got all the same stuff except they got 50% fill instead of 50% ternate. Um, but yeah, I mean, I have a holdback male because there's only one male in that clutch, and he actually has really thick back pattern.
And that's what I want to see happen more with Phantoms because it's pretty thin.
Yeah, actually, what I'm trying to do, since I can't get any more Philippines in, the whole reason I did that breeding is because
You
I
mean
want,
you mean because we can't get any more retics?
yeah,
Well, wait. This is kind of what I wanted to jump to before we get too far away from what you said earlier, with the guy that may have the secret Sule in his basement.
yeah.
Um, I don't know if either of you guys have read on the history of just reptile smuggling in general in this country, but there's a couple good books, The Lizard King and oh fuck, I can't remember the Hidden World or something like
Yeah.
that. But it outlines just kind of the reptile smuggling into the U.S. How much of that do you think is actually going on still?
Well, I can tell you there's not much in retics because no one's offered me anything.
That's
Well,
kind of
I
what
will.
I'm referring to. I
I
mean,
So,
I
it's like,
I do know of one thing that kind of recently happened, even just this last year. I'm not gonna just even throw it out there. It's happening. Might be seldomly. This was a sought after morph, um, that was,
does it
they
start with an A?
no
nah, it's with a
Oh.
tech.
no. Dude, are you kidding me? I would be so excited about Aztec happening in here, but no. No, this was something that has been like we know we've had them in a while. It's taken a while to breed them, but there was another group of animals that came in that would have completely blown the market for them. I'm gonna stop talking because that even just that much is a lot.
Well, here's what I'm going for because my favorite retic is actually a Luzon Philippine, and they just have a little bit better color than some of the southern fills.
Where's Luzon compared to
Mhm.
Mindanao?
It's north. It's a giant island north. It has those big man eaters.
That's not where tribal came from.
Tribals from Bowl,
Okay.
but here
So
this
this
is
is where the new stories are popping up from.
yeah. So I'm trying to use some Ternate color to kind of hopefully. Why is this not letting me attach this? Oh, I can drag it. Um, to kind of add some oranges and yellows and get some more crazy back patterns. So I did a breeding in hopes that it creates an animal like this.
Are you also sending these to Nathan?
Yes,
Okay, cool. I just sent this one over, but oh, dude. So honestly,
because that's pretty much the best looking retic in the world.
that color right there, I'm gonna pop this up on the screen, but just so that you guys are, if you're just listening, if you guys have seen a crazy busy ternate pattern, it's just like that, but it has gold and silvers that you would see in the Mindanao, Philippines. So I can see exactly why you would pair those two together.
I'm gonna send you some more Luzons.
It's so crazy you almost start to think it's
A
leaning
morph?
calico.
Yeah,
Right.
Yeah.
yeah. Here's some more
You can get
Luzons.
lost. You can get lost in that pattern. Like, where does the snake
What's
start
up
and
with
end?
its head?
Just probably pushing.
Yeah, probably just
Yeah.
fucked its head
Okay.
up. Yeah, yeah. It's just got a
Well, it's
little
all
bit of
healed
scalp.
up, so it looks
So
kind of cool.
Yeah,
those are Luzon, Philippines,
yeah.
and
Those are Luzons.
do you know if any of those have ever been proven out? So like the middle one that you sent us, and I'll pull this up here. Um, that looks like a morph.
Yeah.
That almost looks kind of like a crazy complex Borneo as well.
Yeah, it's. I don't think so. 'Cause it's kind of like before Philippine got shut down in the '90s. I mean, people could have got these animals. That's what sucks. It's like all those animals that were here, and I mean, there's still some like Thai blood floating around. But I mean, it's just is shitty that like nobody thought to like, okay, let's try to get this stuff in and try to, maintain it because I mean, I would love to be able to, breed pure Luzons and be producing animals like this. I wouldn't need a morph in my collection if I
That
had normals that look like this.
that frustrates me. Like even with the Philippine tribal stuff, like the tribal stuff, I cannot stand when people start to cross that in with other motleys.
Yeah, because it kills it. It kills
It
that back pattern.
well, not just kills the back patterns, but now you have you don't know which like you're just dirtying the water of a motley and a tribal when we need to make sure that we're keeping them separate. So like the same thing that like we see in the ocelot that we might have found anery line within a mainland blood, like we should not be crossing that into Superdorf until we can actually establish a
Uh,
mainland population.
exactly. Well, here's the other thing. The snake you're talking about, let me pull this up. I think I have a picture. You know how they're talking about the possible anery in it, and I don't know if that's anery. Um, it's probably
Are you
uh
going to show me that Halmahera?
which helmet do you want to see?
No, are you talking about the picture that
No,
you're trying to pull up?
no, I'm trying to pull up the second ocelot that was caught
The
because it
super red one?
no, the super silver one.
Oh.
I don't know if you've ever seen this. I have to look through like 100 pics real quick. Give me a second.
Um,
Is
while
there
we're
any? While I'm looking through pics, is there anything else you want to see? Because there's a good chance I have it in front of me right now.
well, actually, why don't you go ahead and just bring up, since I mentioned it, since and this is a Maluku topic. A lot of people have asked me personally, like, hey, do you know of any like anery ternates or any anery halmaheras? And there was a picture that you sent me a while back of what could be an anery halmahera, which I think a lot of people, when they look at how dark halmaheras are, like for me, that was the only reason why I got a visual anery jampea was because
Yeah.
I need to try to make an anery halmahera.
Well, you know the
I
other
would want to see
nice
that bit fired up.
Right.
the other nice thing about using Saputrii or a Halma is the ridiculous amount of red pigment. And now, and when you have that, you have anery gene, so it shuts it off. So now you're not in a position anymore to play a guessing game on what's anery and what's not because you can't mistake. This isn't a Halma, but this is the second ocelot that was found. And it was found, it was 2 or 4 years later, and it was found almost in the exact same spot as the original.
Yeah, so very silver. Doesn't have the red. What's crazy about this one is I don't see that yellow head that you typically see with them.
I was just about to say that.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
here's the original.
Yeah, the original is crazy red. Oh,
Well,
that
you can't see it in this. This was kind of a shitty pick, but this is the original male.
okay.
Yeah, that's the
Oh,
line that they bred at the
that's
farm in
interesting.
Indo. And yeah, because he's got the yellow head. He's got that Eastern Javan yellow head on him.
Rodney, you're gonna have me go to work on editing
Why?
these videos with all these pictures.
Yeah. Oh, this is a little off topic, but here's a wild. Did you ever see the wild caught? I forget which Philippine island it came from, but it was a wild caught T positive.
uh, yeah, you did. I mean, I've seen it. I don't know. Nate, go ahead and send it to me and Nathan.
I
Uh,
may have seen it,
This
but
is like the
only
greatest
if it was
looking.
posted to one of the pages.
Yeah, this is like the greatest like albino ever.
yeah. So this is a T positive
Wild caught.
Philippine.
Yeah, wild caught Phil.
Look how dark that is. That looks like caramel.
Yeah, yeah, it's definitely like an Indo type gene. I don't know where that picture is of that uh uh anery looking Halma because my RNB Reptiles Facebook got taken down. So we just lost all that data. You
Oh,
know.
Along
because of
with everyone else's, it's
I'm
wild.
Yeah,
trying I'm trying to be patient and not make a new page just because mine's still under review, but I'm about to just throw in the towel. I'm
well,
frustrated as hell.
it's really frustrating for me because the largest source of information on locality retics was the old Indonesian reticulated python lovers group. That was the like number one source for me. And when Facebook put that ban on reptile cells, they took that down immediately. And there was probably 100 localities on that page.
Yeah.
And that was just crazy.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, that was a huge loss. Here's my aberrant.
Hold on.
Sh-
I wanna just go ahead and send that, but I want you send that Anery Halmahera picture.
I don't know where the hell it's at.
It's on your Patreon.
Oh, is it? Hold on, let me pull up my Patreon. Hold on, let me pull up my Patreon.
I'll probably just cut this out and pull it. I have it. But yeah, so I want to ask you real quick. A lot of people ask me what's the difference between a Halmahera and a Ternate, and for those of us that have them each in our collection, it's easy to tell. But can you talk about the differences in size, in at least the demeanor of the ones that we have here? Just kind of talk about the difference between the two, and then also. Um, I would like to hear you talk a little bit about the limited diversity within Halmaheras and like where the hell any of the other ones are.
Um, I don't recommend Halmaheras for most people. Like, I guess that's the best way to kind of tell the like for me to like say, well, what's the difference between a Halmahera and a Ternate? It's like, well, don't get a Halmahera if you don't like bleeding, um, because they Ternate babies are scared. Halma babies are not scared. They're just they're like, okay, we're gonna fight.
Right.
You know,
They see so they're defensive because like there's that natural fight flight,
yeah, but they go into fight.
instinct.
Ternate goes
Yeah,
into flight. Halma goes into like
exactly what I
goes
was
into
gonna say.
yeah, yeah,
Halmas will square up with you for 10 rounds.
yeah, yeah. It is crazy. The main thing with them I see is they do have. I think their body is a little bit more slender. Now this is very limited data because there's so few. I had 2.2 and 1.1 died, um, unfortunately. But you know, there's very limited data on them. But I would say that's the main difference is their temperament. I mean, their head structure is definitely different. I don't know if you've noticed that by looking at yours, but you they tend to have a little bit longer, thinner snout than a ternate.
Yeah, Ternates kind of, and again, Ternates kind of remind me of that Bulldog Saputrii kind of head shape.
Yeah, yeah, and even other even other small islands next to ternate, which I can show you right now, um, also have that. And let me get back on my website because I can show you Tadori and McKeon. Um, I don't have a lot of pictures of those, unfortunately.
And those are Malukus, correct?
Yeah, the Tadori is right under um, Ternate, and then there's McKeon. There's two little islands, and then there's McKeon, um, and they look very very. Actually, you know what? I know where I put those. I put those in here. Um, Here's Tadori. Here is Tadori. This is kind of a blurry pic, but this was sent to me from Indonesia. So that yeah, so that's a Tadori. I should have
Okay,
another one here.
I've seen that picture around. It reminds me, it has like a Ternate type of pattern,
Yeah,
but it has a
it's
lot of the reds the deep reds that you would see in the Homa, but without the black.
yeah, yeah. So I mean, it's definitely um, it's definitely got that look. And here's a McCann.
That second one you sent, okay. And what I really like about the Maluku region, I mean, you can see the Malukus, there's subtle differences between them, but at the end of the day, I still think out of any other region in Indonesia, they have the most complex pattern.
Yeah, yeah,
Like Nathan, I want to hear Nathan's thoughts on that. Like out of all these pictures that he's sending us and that we're putting up on the video, like is there pattern? I don't know. Is there another locality that has crazy pattern like that other than maybe Borneo?
well, here is well, I'll give you this. This is an island just north of Morate, and you can definitely see the a similarity there. Um,
Yeah.
so you can definitely see that similarity in the back pattern and side pattern. But yeah, it's I don't know of any other place other than Philippines.
I really like those like super slim like silver flames that they get,
Yeah,
Right.
and then the crazy back pattern. Then yeah, just for whatever reason, the color
My
just
male
gets
my
blown out, and you get a ton more contrast.
my male has wider silver flames.
yeah.
But what's cool about it is that the tip of the silver flames at the very top connect to the dorsal
Oh,
stripe.
really?
Yeah, so it looks so freaking cool. It's pretty incredible.
Oh, here's a picture right in front of me. I'll send you because you might want to see it. Here is the Annery Madu that uh, it just happens to be sitting here next to some of these other pictures, so I'll send it to you. Here's the Annery Madu that started the Madu Annery line of Madus. Well, it's pretty much the only established line in the country of
Here in
Madus.
the US,
Yeah,
is that your picture?
yeah, that's yeah. I should have a picture of him breeding somewhere. I have a picture of him locked up with the Madu, and
So,
that's that line that started like the main
yeah.
uh Oh, you said you wanted me to show you like my actual favorite look of a ternate?
Yeah.
Here it is. I was hoping I'd find this picture. I wasn't able to get this snake in because of the band, and I was very disappointed.
All right.
That
Um,
This is what I've been waiting for.
right there.
that's oh, yep. You sent me that
Ooh,
picture. That is so clean.
solid stripe almost all the way down the bottom. There's maybe one break
There's
Yeah.
before the
there's
tail.
there's Calatoas that
Oh,
would be
two.
jealous of that
Okay,
solid
that's
stripe.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite looks for that. You know, and I'm trying to make that look, but it's yeah, polygenics are a little tougher than people think.
Can I actually, you mentioned the word polygenics.
Yeah.
And I feel like because you talk about it a lot, we'd be doing our listeners a disservice if I don't give you the floor to talk about the importance of polygenics and why we need to start changing the way that we just start pairing our animals.
Well, I don't know anything about polygenics, to be honest, like because I'm not a scientist, but I recognize that everything is genetic. You're not getting around. It's not just random. It's you have sets of genes, and they line up in certain ways. And when you have like something that controls height, that's not a single gene. That's multiple genes that interact with another set of multiple genes that come in, and then you that determines how tall you are. So when you're dealing with these back patterns, side patterns, color spectrum, you have this whole group of genes, and depending on how they line up, that's what you're going to get. And to some extent, you can control that through selective breeding. Because if you and one of the main ways you see how polygenic works, it's usually when it works against you, when you end up striping something out, or you end up with some thinner black,
Or
and that
or even when you like gene stack morphs and you get a solid color that animal.
yeah, and that's the big difference between breeding like morphs and breeding for traits, is morphs are a little more forgiving when it comes to averages. Say like the picture I just sent you of that retic. If when I'm going to try to make that snake, and I might get lucky and get 1 out of 10 eggs. You know what I mean? And there's not very few people want to play that game. But when you look at the route that mainland breeding has went, which is just ball python gene stacking, um, everything ends up the same snake. And I don't want to be a broken record because I make fun of that shit all the time, but you just end up with a big yellow banana. And and you can't there's nothing else you can that's the end result that you're guaranteed to get, because I don't think people take into consideration when they're gene stacking what they're actually doing. You're not When you're morph stacking and you're using these morphs, you're really not adding to color and pattern. You're shutting off a section of polygenic traits. And now people are going to hear this and are like, "Oh, he's a fucking idiot. You don't know what you're talking about." Because it sounds kind of counterproductive. Because when you look at the snake and it's all these crazy colors, they're like, "What do you mean it doesn't add color?" Well, a perfect example is albinism. Albinism doesn't add a bunch of bright colors to your snake. It shuts off pigment development. So that's what you're left with. So when you start to gene stack and you have albinism that shuts off pigment, and then you have a gene that kind of reduces side pattern, and then another gene that reduces back pattern, and another gene that thins out black, like platinum thins out black.
Big time. And you see it a lot in the Calatoas.
Yeah, yeah. So you're gene stacking with these animals, and you're just layer by layer shutting off pattern and color. So all that's left is just a handful of colors and a little bit of pattern. So, I look at polygenic production as okay, people want a pretty albino snake, but they also want some contrast, and we don't want to end up with a monotone snake with horrible color and horrible contrast. So, you know, there's the outcrossing aspect of polygenics, which is great because now you're adding all this fresh blood, wild caught blood into your animals, and that's all great. But at the same time, excuse me, you're also adding color and pattern structure back into it. So there's more of that that a morph would have to fight against to shut off.
Right.
So you can retain some color, you can retain some pattern, you can retain some thickness of black. So if and super dwarfs have obviously become the way to go in retics, and they're already super limited on color spectrum and pattern. They just they don't have it. So it's not going to take long for gene stacking in super dwarfs to make worse looking animals than were made in mainlands. That's why it's important.
Yeah.
And anybody who thinks that you should not combine localities is either a fucking idiot or just doesn't have the capabilities of doing it.
There's Rodney. You've contained yourself pretty well today.
Yeah. Yeah. But you know what I
Um,
mean? Like that, I mean, there's you either have to have no ability to understand the concept that a 5-year-old could understand of what we're talking about, or you just don't have the animals to improve your
the
stock.
the only way that I can see someone be so linear thinking in that concept is if the only thing that they're thinking about is
It's
size.
size. Yeah.
And the thing is that if everyone only focuses on size, which don't get me wrong, I personally do believe the retic industry needs to move to make more manageable size retics and
Yeah.
make them smaller because at the end of the day, really large retics don't get treated well. And
Yeah.
and and so we definitely need to move towards making small retics, but like I'm someone who my goal is to make manageable and smaller size retics, but I have a few pairings that I plan to do in the future. I'm going to be making some sacrifices and taking them into localities that are going to increase the size the first generation so that I can
Yeah.
then take that result and take it into smaller stuff.
Well, and I also think too, you know, I think we need a lot more selective breeding before gene stacking. I think you need to
Right.
take a single morph and
Like
try to
make
make it look as nice as you possibly can,
right.
and then do something with it.
Make the best tiger, make the best marble, make the
Yeah.
best albino, make the best phantom, whatever the case may be. But yeah, like, and that's in my opinion, that's how you sell an animal,
Yeah, you just have
right?
better if you have better if your animals have better aesthetic value, they're going like there's here's the thing in reptiles. There's two things that set prices in reptiles. There's scarcity, that's when you see this super high end price and then people buy it, and then for some reason they think that $20,000 animal that there was two of, now there's 50 of or 100 of is still $20,000 and no one can figure out why the price comes down. Okay, so there's that, which is just always a steady decline. And then there's something that holds price, and that's aesthetic value. There's a reason a purple albino has basically sold for the same price for 10 years. And it and to this day, a purple albino is probably going to sell before a motley and for more money. You know what I mean? It just people feel that the aesthetic value of the animal is worth the money.
Yeah. Um, Speaking of money, I want to talk about something off topic.
How to make $1 million?
No, not how to make $1 million, but have you started
Oh, that's
recording?
just funny with the email that Lucas and I got the other day.
Oh yeah, we're gonna be on a podcast on Monday, or at least recording a podcast that honestly I think he saw your episode that you or
Oh,
that
really?
so we're gonna be on a podcast that this dude does more of like a between two ferns. So like he asks kind of like dickhead questions, but in a light
Okay.
way. And so he asked the questions for both of us. When did you make your first $1 million breeding retics?
Oh, really?
But yeah, speaking of that, I wanted to ask, did you start recording birds outside for people who have cats
No,
that
I'm
they
working on that. I'm gonna get a third camera. I think I'm gonna get the Fuji XH2S. I think I'm gonna get
Na-
that.
Nathan, this guy calls me one day, Rodney calls me up and he's like, I just came across a page that has like over 100 million views, and what he does is he gets a nice camera and he records birds outside. He puts it up on YouTube for cat owners to play on their TV while they're
I've
gone.
played these for my cats
Dude,
before, and they
Rodney,
absolutely eat
Yeah,
the
no,
shit
I'm
up.
gonna start doing it. I'm gonna start like,
that's
Yeah,
ridiculous.
Rodney, go
yeah.
for it. I will play your channel for my cats as I
Well,
leave
yeah, there's
for the
people
day.
making six figures taking videos of birds right now, so I want to get in on that.
That's
But
insane. And what's crazy is that people leave their house for 8 to 10. Like, can you imagine the
I just
view hours?
yeah,
Like
that's
the
why they
amount
get
of
massive view hours. The one dude has I watched the one dude. He's got right around 500 million views
it's
on his
insane.
channel. Yeah, and it's just birds. It's crazy. But
Oh
is there
man.
any other? Yeah, I'm looking at a bunch of pictures. Is there any other crazy stuff you want to see? You want to see some Sulawesi variation?
I mean, I'm always down.
Here is this animal made it to the UK. It went before I could get my hands on it. Um, yeah, I don't know. You've probably never seen this picture. This is from a southeastern Sula. This is a Kandari region, and you're gonna like this.
Dude, that pattern, that dorsal pattern is like,
It made it to Europe, and I lost track of it.
and that yellow head.
Yeah, that's a really bright yellow head for a Sola.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've seen some Sulas that have some decent yellow heads, but the thing about most Sulas is that they tend to dull out past the head. But
Well, yeah,
this one
The
has
whole
good
thing is yellow.
right.
yeah, that's a really pretty snake. I think that might be in the same range. I think that might come from the same range as the Prague-Shy berm. The dwarf berm's on Sulawesi, and I think it overlaps in that region as well.
I'm trying to find someone. There was 3 clutches produced in the US this year for the first time in a while, and I'm
Well,
trying
just
to
be careful, because not the just because they're out of Indo don't mean they're Prague-Shy.
No, I know
Because
that, but I mean, I don't
there's berms littered throughout the Lesser
I've I've
Sandas.
I've been following prog shies for a while. When you know a prog shy pattern,
Yeah,
it's not that difficult to spot.
yeah, they're pretty easy to tell. Um, I was hoping, a lot of people are like really okay with the fact that we can't import anymore, and I know why they're okay with it because that's the reason the price is up so high, and I would sacrifice some price for some new animals.
I think I
And
would too.
Before you continue, Rodney, hold that thought because I'll share my opinions after you, Rodney, but I want to hear Nathan's opinions as well. Nathan, what do you think about like would you like to be able to re-import or not?
100%. I don't think there should be any reason we shouldn't be able to utilize the same bloodlines that we're seeing within the UK.
yeah, especially if especially
I
getting
just
out of
don't
UK.
see. I just don't see the need, and especially with how bottlenecked all of our bloodlines are here, I think importation would probably be one of the most important things we could get. But do I think it's going to happen? Probably not.
My I would be divorced in 2 seconds because I would have about 15 localities in my garage within the first like 6 months.
I have a bit more self control, but yeah, I mean,
I
I get
don't.
it.
Um,
Well,
Rodney, I'm going to leave your thoughts for last. I'm going to give my thoughts because I feel like yours are definitely going to be a lot more well thought out. But like I'm kind of mixed up. Like clearly, me as a hobbyist and a breeder would love importation to come back in. We'd get a lot more localities. We'd get better. We'd get new bloodline. We'd get and on top of that, we now that we've learned the mistakes that we've made of not tracing and not being really careful with documentation and bringing animals in, it would be a nice like fresh start. It would probably piss a lot of people off, but I also see the downside of it in the sense of like, I mean, there are so many new people that get into this that are very gun ho of like, I wish I had a wild caught retic, or there's so many people that just
we'll let them
like,
get one.
I mean, these well,
They'll
that's the
change their mind real quick.
but that's the thing, though. That's at the cost of the animal. And what we know about wild caught animals is majority of the people that keep them treat them like absolute crap. So do we need to actually bring more in for them to just be treated like crap because they don't know how to work with that animal?
Well, I think quotas would be great.
What do you mean?
I think if the U.S. said, you know what, fuck it, you can bring retics back in, but each importer can only bring in 50. That's going to keep the money up. That means they're not going to be bringing in the farm hashed out Sumatrans. They're going to go for some rarer, higher end localities. Problem solved. I think
We only have a handful of people that really have the import permits
yeah.
and the will to want to import retics in general.
If we
Well,
can limit the number of permits and the number of animals that are brought in, but the thing
yeah,
is that let's use and I don't mean to use this in like a bad way, but I'm just thinking about a very reputable person like Bushmaster who imports a lot of animals. Once they reach countryside, it can get sold to a child. I mean, we don't know who ends up keeping them.
well, there was
Because let me
I
tell you, real quick, let me tell you,
yeah.
there's a lot of idiots out there that are spending $20,000 plus on retics right now. That shouldn't be keeping
Well, give them
retics.
my number because they're not calling me. Um, but you know, there's not as nearly as much demand for wild caught retics as you think because everybody knows, regardless of what kind of locality it is, it's still going to be a wild caught retic. And the
Well,
only
even with the captive bred stuff, when you start getting into breeding them and you're
yeah
working with males, the most docile of male, once he thinks that you're any kind of competition,
yeah
is just as bad as a wild caught on their bad day.
yeah, I've only ever encountered one locality that was friendly, and that was Karampa. That's the only straight out the bag snake that was like seemed like it came out of captivity. You know, I mean, and that's I mean, none the CRAMs were as bad, if
Or
not
evil.
yeah, they were as bad, if not worse than Halmas. But no, I really think like there's four islands right off Halmahera that are really small, right around Ternate and Tadori and McKeon. There's Hiri, there's Mayatara, Moti, and Mari. And then there's a fifth island like out in the middle of nowhere. It's Maju, I believe.
In the Maluku region, or
Yes. Yeah, and you have to zoom in on the map to see them, and they're all the size of like Jamp to Kalatoa or Jamp to Karampa. So
imagine a
and
ternate super door.
yeah, and that's like when you say, well, should we get importation back? I say, well, absolutely yes, because I know for a fact that there's super dwarf size islands right next to Ternate and Tadori, and if they have retics on them, they're going to be super dwarf versions of a ternate.
Yeah.
And that's like the best snake ever. You know what I mean? Like you're not beating that. If you can get if you have an animal that looks like a ternate and it's averaging under 9 feet, like
Yeah.
that's you might as well stick your Kalatoas in the freezer, because they're not going to be worth nothing.
That's
But I mean,
that's
and
harsh, but I
yeah,
hear what you're saying.
yeah, but that's just 4 or 5 islands just in that little section. And I mean, you look off Bhutan. I think that's the Wakatobi region of islands. And then you have right off of the Makassar off the Southwest Peninsula, you have Tanakiki that has a very, I've only ever seen a couple pictures of those. Those are very interesting.
Can I make a comment real quick?
Yeah.
I feel like Rodney could be making all of these crazy ass islands up, and I have no clue. He's like Watakiki,
Yeah. Well,
Yeah, I'm
Chinatsa.
not a locality guy at all. So when you see me just sitting here, I'm like,
yeah.
mm-hmm,
Hmm.
mm-hmm.
Well, I
Hmm.
mean, even out of the seven, you have a shit pile of islands. Like you got Kalau right next to Jampia, and then right next to that is Bonarate, and then there's a really small island right off the west coast of Jamp that's it's some stupid ass name. Tanha Mali or something like it. This
I
I
mean, and
think
out of all of these, the only one that I've recognized that you've mentioned is
Bonarate.
Bonerate. Only because someone tried to lie to me and sell me a Bonerate Super Dwarf retic.
Really?
Yeah, that was just like, okay, bye.
Yeah, but
Um,
I mean, like now Jamp is in the same situation as Kalatoa. You got Karumpa, Karumpa, Kalatoa, Madu, and everybody's like, oh, it's just Jamp. Jamp's not by itself. You got Kalau and Bonarate and that Tana Mali Mali or whatever the hell it's called. Um, so just by Jamp, you're looking at three more dwarf slash super dwarf potentials right there. And then you get up into like right off of Solaire, there's a bunch. I can't think of their names off the top of my head. Um,
Even in
and
the Philippines.
yeah. Well, I'll send
That
you the
that
pictures.
surprises me, Rodney, that you can't think of that off the top of your head. Just
Yeah.
with
Right.
all that you've dropped so far.
Well,
Right.
here I'm going to send you. Here is Siao. Siao is one of the smaller islands. Um,
I remember you posted this on one of the pages. There was a small island, a super door size island that they found a retic on.
yeah, they're a little. Let me find a good picture of it. And I mean, and these and
Well,
these guys went more the route of northern Maluku look. I mean, it has a
so
little bit of a color difference.
so while you're looking for that picture and you send it to us, I guess where my perspective comes from is like, yes, me as a human, inherently bad and selfish, I 1000% want to open up importation, but seeing that we can't even keep captive bred mainland retics alive for 15, 20 years, just getting more wild caught animals is going to lead to more neglect and more. It's not. Ultimately, it's great for us as a hobby, as an industry. It's horrible for the animals.
Well, let me throw out a counter to that. Okay, so so the counter to that argument is the negativity that comes with getting import worse than the negativity that comes with not having it. And the negativity of not having it is actually a positive financially because it's caused basically price gouging and the prices of SDs have went through the roof, right? So now there's a much more monetary drive towards these animals for the production for making money. And when you're doing something strictly for money and it's not really about that animal, you know, so there's not any wild caught animals that get neglected, but now we're going to see an overproduction of captive born animals that people are going to have a harder time finding homes for because they've all bought the same projects and are now producing the same thing, same animals with the hopes of, getting those, $1,000 paydays or more on every single animal. So I don't know. I mean, is it a zero sum gain? Is it a trade off? What is it?
That's a good point.
You know what I mean? So I
I
think,
kind of see it the same way.
Yeah.
so I think there is, I think there's going to be good and bad for both. But I think for the long term, because you got to remember these people that are strictly doing this because they think they're going to make $1 million, they're going to be gone. I've had reptiles since I was 5. You know how many people I've seen come and go since I was 5? A lot.
Yeah.
And if you stick around even 5 years in this industry, you'll see a lot of people come and go. You
I
only
have.
have to, yeah, just in 5 years. So, and I'm at 35 years, so I've seen tons of people come and go. And those people go, and at the end of the day, and the locality thing's kind of different too, because that's a different animal right there that you're working with. And I think locality retics, and I mean, this is gonna sound dickheaded, but I think they attract better customers.
I mean, it attracts people. So me being just a locality fanatic, and even just talking to other locality fanatics, you hear more of the passion behind the reason for keeping the animal, and
Yeah,
it's more of like that nature coming into your home, wanting to observe and enjoy, and it's not just the color pattern game.
yeah.
Not to say that people who aren't locality people that keep morphs don't love and have the passion for it, but I would say that statement is I can at least I can relate to it in the sense that I care for these animals like crazy, and
Yeah.
I could lose every morph in my garage right now, and I would still be happy with all the locality stuff I have.
Well, here's
I
here's
agree with you wholeheartedly on that. I mean, I started out with being introduced to these animals through morphs. So that's where I got my start. But talking with people like you guys, I'm getting more educated and more leaning towards, adding locality stuff into my projects because, I love these animals, and what these animals are is, ultimately where they came from.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, well, here's a good example I just sent you guys of what I could have got here
Okay.
if we had importation, and that is a T positive Sanjihi island. Um, that's
Another island that you could totally be making up the name. And
well,
I'm not.
I tell you, well, that some people might know that island because that that 2002 paper that took a look at Jamps and
Yeah.
Solaires. This was the other locality that they looked at was Sanjihi, but I think they only had like one of them or something. So like it like nobody ever talks about this animal in this paper, but that animal specifically seemed to have the most unique uh, characteristics and be the most distant from the other ones. And this is the Sanjihi group of islands. That's right. That's just off of uh, the northern peninsula of Sulawesi. So it's part of the Sola
And for
Island
any of
chains.
you who are looking at this, it has just a ton of contrast. It's
Yeah, so you get
bright orange with
yeah,
like
It's got
tons
like
of white, and then that like back saddle even is like reduced a little bit.
yeah.
what
So
I
you
what
get
I like about it is it's kind of like a combination with the Indo caramel bright orange and yellows, but then it has like almost the Rennet ghost
mm,
bone white
yeah,
along the dorsal.
Hmm.
yeah. So you get so I mean like that's like that that's like that's like polygenics already. Like you got your pattern, you got your color, you got your morph. I mean like you don't and it's Sanjihi, so it's not a giant island, so it's probably dwarfish size. So, having that to start out with your Kalatoa crosses or a Ternate cross, that would be just so much a much finer option than starting with, T positives from Sumatra or Java. So,
And it seems like almost if we were to bring importation back, is we would be reversing the damage that we did early on with these retics, which was
yeah.
basically just gene stacking and color stacking and washing out the animals to now we don't have the individual animals to selectively breed and enhance and make better unless you include locality animals.
Yeah, that's the only way to do it. Yeah. Yeah, because you really can't thicken up pattern with a morph. You can't add a broader color spectrum with a morph. You can only do that with polygenic traits from localities.
I'm trying to find a morph that I can argue with you against that. And I
Well, unless you have a melanistic retic that adds black, you're not going to. That's pretty much your only argument because I
well
thought about this.
hear me out. So we're seeing very high percentages of motleys created in the superdwarf stuff, and
Courtesy of Andrew. No, no,
I
that's Phantom. Sorry.
no, that's Phantom.
Yeah.
But I will say that
Thanks, Andrew.
that if you look at Kalatoas, terribly not good with the inky black stuff. But if you look at a high percentage of a motley
Yeah.
Kalatoa, motley does bring back a little bit thicker blacks.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and it also because it kind of like sucks everything to the top.
Yeah.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's kind of, and yeah, it's one of those things that kind of like pushes things back up to the back. Whereas like, I think the marble gene is probably one of the most interesting genes in that it kind of, I've been trying to understand marble. Like I've really been trying to figure out like what exactly that gene is. And it's not
Unpopular opinion, but I feel like it kind of goes the way of Golden Child for me,
In what
well,
sense?
where like you have so much like variability in it, and it washes out so much that it's just not consistent enough for me to want to like put into my projects. But
I
I would love to
I
hear.
I agree in that sense, but I agree just because I don't think people have been selectively
no,
like
not at all.
so marble, in my opinion, has been, and Rodney, you can add your thoughts too, but
Well, and that's where
um,
those Ternate marbles come in. Is those
right.
are my favorite marbles I've ever
Also,
seen.
I'm going to include the picture that my helper Sean took. 14 years old, got an iPhone 13, and took a phenomenal picture, like his first picture of a snake with his phone, of a Philippine marble that I have here that Rodney produced from someone else that I'm selling. And again, just with the right localities and gene, it's a incredible, probably the best marble I've seen in person, but like I think a lot of people just aimlessly took marble to other morphs to gene stack. And so what we see a lot with marbles is the stripe out look. Like someone just posted a picture and today actually of I took a screenshot because I was going to send it to Rodney, but it was like a 62.5% super dwarf platinum marble. And I looked at the animal and I was like, what's marble about this? Like I didn't see anything that was marble, and I think marble is one of the great examples of when you don't carefully selectively breed, it could turn into just, I don't want to say trash or garbage because they're
No,
still
it turns
retics,
into straight
but
straight trash. That's what
they're
they. I mean, like when I was really happy with the marble Ternates and marble fills. I lean a little more towards the marble Ternates, but
Smart.
it wasn't it wasn't the marble gene that did that. It was all the other shit added to it. I got lucky. Me and Andrew did a breeding loan. I sent him a Gaspar line platy. Uh, that's nice.
I don't know if you could see the broken up pattern in there.
Okay, yeah, that
I'll
looks nice.
I'll bring it up, but yeah, that Philippine marble is insane.
But he bred 3 males to this female. I said, and all 3 males got her, and we got one marble, and he just gave it to me because he's like, oh, we only got one marble, and it turned out to be that insanely nice male marble I have. That's 25 Jamp, 25 Calitoa. So I lucked out polygenically speaking on that animal, and then used him into it was actually a calico ternate, is what because one of my ternates turned calico.
Oh, dude, can you send us some pictures of that, man?
I need to get some. She's at Andrews right now. I'll have to look
Yeah, I
up.
don't know if I've
You
Well,
haven't
she,
seen
ever
he
seen that
he has
animal.
a video on his YouTube of
well,
that calico
it
ternate.
turned silver, and then it got really dark. It turned like it was like it had two colors, like it was like white and black, and then it like got real weird colors, and it got all this black to it. It's a
So
very
so
strange looking snake.
have you bred that snake yet?
Andrew bred it to something.
So you don't wanna start pushing the calico lines and charge
Yeah,
$8,000 for
yeah,
them?
for yeah, but no, Andrew. Well, next week Andrew's hatch. I think like in a week Andrew's hatching out GC ternates.
Oh, I've been talking to him a lot about those.
Yeah, but the marble gene, to me, like, um, I don't think one. I don't think it causes. I don't. This is going to sound stupid, but I don't think it necessarily causes marbling. I think what it does is it just exaggerates whatever the phenotype expression would have been of the polygenic traits in play. And I know that's
Can
kind of
you
a
can you explain that to me like I'm 5?
well, I think if you have an animal that kind of has a rounded back pattern, some connected diamonds, that kind of stuff, like just that more of a roundish look, when you breed a marble to it, stripes it out. When you have an animal that's going to have a sharp pattern and some
That more
disconnect,
like chainsaw look.
yeah, then it kind of like it kind of spreads it out, because like when you look at a marble side, like a side pattern on a marble, it just kind of like blows up the side pattern basically, and it just seems to do like whatever the snake would have looked like normal. It just kind of takes all those traits and just exaggerates it. So that was my thinking when I was like, all right, I want to make the best looking marble. So I picked out the F1 Ternate that I thought would make the best looking marble that was breedable at the time. And I mean, it's gonna be hard to beat those marbles. Like, you know,
Trust me, after I got that marble from you and I have her, she's probably, I'm hoping to get her to go at the end of this year.
yeah.
I'm on a mission. You kind of set that standard in my mind, and that's I will always, when I work with morphs, try to produce the best of each morph, and that you've set the standard with that, so that's my competition.
Well, I think I'm the first person to ever hatch out a clutch of marbles that didn't have any striped animals. So it wasn't like I lucked out and hit one. It was I did 2 clutches that year, one with a fill and one with a ternate. None of them had striped animals.
Yeah,
I managed to avoid striping altogether. So, I mean, I must be right about some aspect of this.
yeah. That male that you have is an asset to the marble, to marble reproduction.
I one of the snakes that I was most impressed with that I've done with ternates was the sun tigers.
So I was gonna say that when we were talking about morphs and like what. So Nathan asked like, what are some things that you're working into? He asked this like way earlier on in the podcast. One thing that I think would go phenomenal with Ternates is, I mean, Sunfire. I think in general, just a Sunfire Ternate, getting that all the way up to
Yeah.
93.75%. But to have a
Well, and
crazy,
if you have a picture of those, I could easily put those against pictures of some of the Sunfire Tiger, Kalatoa with light jamp influence crosses that I
yeah,
produce,
yeah,
and just
actually
show the
that,
difference between the two.
They pretty much smoke like all sometimes.
yeah.
Yeah,
Like,
well, I
I mean,
mean,
I was like,
I'm not saying that they won't. Like
No, but
I'm
it would
saying
be
I would
so
love
so
for people to see the locality
right.
influence that
It
there's a
comes through
video.
both of
I
these.
found a video.
Nathan, this is why
What I'll do,
Because
this is why we're doing
let me
this.
just pull up my Instagram really quick and see if I can't. Or
You're
no,
a genius.
better yet, while you guys are talking, I'm gonna go through my pictures and in my chat with both of you,
Yeah.
I'm
So
gonna
this
send
is
some pictures.
this is a great topic, and we might have talked about it earlier a little bit, but like the importance of like diversifying the looks of certain morphs with localities, and a good reason why we brought Rodney on to talk about Ternate and to talk about Halmahera and the Malukus. Um, just the idea that separating yourself from the rest of the crowd is so important in today's industry with the lack of diversity that we have. And when you have an animal like a Ternate that is um, manageably sized, that you can start to take into different morphs. Um, if you stick to the Kalatoa, Madu, I don't know if you're crazy enough to spend a lot of money on a Karampa, or if you're working in that line, you know, we've seen some of the best animals that could potentially come out already in the different morphs with that. Now, you take a different locality that's a manageable size, like a Southern Philippine or a Ternate or I'm not even gonna say Halmahera because again, very very few people should own Halmaheras, but um, you can add a completely different 180 look to the animals that you are um, going to end up producing. And even if you have to sacrifice a little bit of size at first, if you're serious about having a retic breeding business, even if it's a side hobby and you're doing it for yourself, or if you want to make this a full-time gig, um, the only way that you're going to be able to move animals and not sit on a bunch of animals is if you separate yourself with locality stuff. And that's why we're talking about Ternates and Halmaheras today.
well, financially, I think it's the best way. Like, I don't want to crush anyone's dreams, but prices come down.
They do, and they will.
Yeah, and so what? So the question you got to ask yourself is what's the best way to combat price
Reduction.
loss?
Yeah,
Yeah, you know.
exactly. And that's to just create stuff that stands out. And so we'll see because I don't have the images in front of me yet. But
I
we'll
just sent Nathan a video of my Ternate Sun Tigers.
You just sent me a video. I just sent you a picture, but I believe that one has some anery on top of it.
Oh,
So
okay.
yeah, and I'm not getting any. So when
I sent it to both of you. So
oh, there we go. Rodney, I'm going to put you on the clock. I need you to take a fresh picture of your animal.
Which one?
Of what do you mean of your sunflower?
Oh, they're at Andrew's house. He's bringing them back next week.
Well,
He'd taken them to a show.
find a picture. Don't let the viewers down.
Rodney, just for a little transparency, this is the first time like Rodney and I have talked like face to face. Really, like I've complimented you plenty of times on your like photo setup and everything, and I'm pretty silent on social media, but I've always just admired all the information you've put out there. But oh shit, where was I going with this? Man, I'm losing my train of thought. Fuck.
I'm just gonna scratch my beard until you come up with it.
No, you should probably just pick it up and cut that
What
out.
what was the what was the breeding on these this pic you sent me?
Nathan,
I think we just
So that was the female was a 75% Kalatoa, 12.5% Jampea. The importer was Canadian Reptiles.
okay.
I bought the female from Eric Lee back in 2016,
Okay.
2015, somewhere around there.
You've been keeping for a good amount of time, man.
Yeah.
See, like when you got that
Keep-
much, SD blood in something like that, like I think like that's a good option to run a Ternate into.
Right.
You
That's
know
what
what I
I'm
mean?
saying.
Like,
Well, and that's what I would want a male ternate for is
yeah,
something like her. She is
Just don't just
tiny.
just don't buy it from Rodney. Wait till I produce them
yeah,
and buy them from me.
yeah.
I,
I
I
would,
would. I mean, I'm sorry, Lucas, but I
I'm
would
messing
like to buy
around.
something from Rodney at some point.
No,
yeah,
you
just
got
be
to go
careful
with
with it.
Rodney's
Yeah, just
turnate.
be careful with red phase anything with suns because that sometimes like a lot of
Dude, you just reminded me. I'm gonna have to cut this like earlier in the video, but
yeah.
anyways, keep going, and then I'm gonna ask you
Well,
about
some
That
that red
female
face.
is a purple head anery. She doesn't have
okay.
any sunfire in her. It was the
Yeah.
male that I ran to her. It was a 25% Kalatoa, 25% Jamp.
Yeah. But yeah,
Oh, anery GC, whatever bullshit he was.
yeah, but like
Tiger.
sunfire is one of those morphs that you got to be kind of careful with if your pigment's too dark because I've seen some pretty not good looking like sun slayers. So like you got to be careful so be careful like with like using a red face ternate like if you're trying to do something like add sunfire into an animal like this like down the road because like when you get those browns and stuff from Kalatoa, and then you get too dark of a red from, like, say, a
It'll brown out.
Saputri. Yeah, it'll brown out an animal. So unless you're making visual albinos, like yeah, it's really easy to ruin a morph.
Rodney,
There's a million ways to ruin a morph.
Rodney, I need you.
Yeah.
I really need you to talk about red face. I've had so many people on our Patreon because I post pictures of my red face turnate, and I have so many people that ask me about what is red face and blah blah blah. And we're speaking to the person who termed it and who's created them. And please talk a little bit about what a red face turnate is versus the standard turnate that.
Well, there seems to be in my collection. There seems to be three phases. There's like your standard phase, like your one male would be like a standard phase. And there's
Female.
or well, you're male. I think
Oh,
he's your male.
you're talking about the busy one. Yeah,
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 yeah.
yeah.
Like he's your like standard colors, right? And then you have what I would consider more of a green phase that's lighter.
That's like my female.
Yeah, and then there's the ones that have a lot more of the Saputrii bloodline like type look to them, and it does seem to be more of a dominant breeding. Like
What's
when you breed them, it seems that it does kind of dominate a little bit, but it does seem to be at least semi controllable.
yeah?
For an example, when I bred wild caught male 4, who's just kind of like a standard looking ternate, I bred him to a red phase, and the whole clutch was red phase. Like every one of them had the color of the mom, and I have a really dark red phase from clutch. What the fuck clutch is that?
The one that I have, Clutch 7.
No, it's clutch 3.
No,
And he's really dark and really aberrant. And I just bred him to my female, wild caught female 3, who's also red phase, and I got to go pull the egg. She laid a whopping one good egg. So whoever, yeah.
so
So hopefully it's good because I only got one egg.
I'll
That
include
better be one damn good looking baby.
Yeah, I hope so.
I'll include the images here, and I'm speaking over what I've already included, but it seems like based on your description, I have all three. So
Yeah, you got
I
close. Your one's
so
pushing.
I have
Your
my
clutch
male
6 is pushing green.
my male is my male's the standard pattern and color, even though he looks phenomenal. My first female that I got from you, she has a lot of green hues. And then I have a red phase as well. So I'll include those images for everyone to be able to see kind of the difference
Yeah,
of
yeah,
those
and
three.
it's not like Saputrii. It's not like where that's what it is, where it's more of like just it is what it is. But it seems to be more of a phase, um, with ternates. There does seem to be color phases, and I mean you see that. I mean I remember seeing color phases in Calatoas like over a decade ago. Like you get your silver ones, and you'd basically get like a little more of a green one. So you know
Mhm.
I think I don't think these phases are like specific to Ternate Island. I think it's pretty common throughout. A
Yeah, I
lot
mean,
of it, it's
I've
We
even with
talked a
even
lot about that on our first locality talk with Eric
right,
Lee. I
because
mean,
Eric Lee had a
my
great
favorite
example.
of the yeah, my favorite of those color phases of the Kalatoa is the super silver stuff. I mean,
yeah.
that's
I
Exactly.
actually have a
ultimately what you aim
really.
for.
I'll show you the nicest Calatoa ever
He
produced.
has Eric Lee has a Barry Leonard line Calatoa that has an open back
Yeah,
pattern that is just as silver can
that's
be.
my
Oh,
favorite
really?
line.
Yeah, it's literally my favorite Calatoa that I've seen. He can't get that female to breach. He always parthos out, and he only has one clutch that some of
Yep.
the partho babies survives.
Parthos don't
If
do
I
do
could buy
very well.
any animal that hasn't been produced, that would be it.
Yeah,
No,
I want that line that he has if he can get it. I also want that Chris Wilson. I actually just messaged Chris Wilson with the aberrant pattern. He's not looking to trade or get any bloodlines, and so I might be cashing. I might be coughing up some cash to get a super. I have a Calatoa that I produced from my wild caught pairing that I just got a pair back from someone who is using me to sell them again. He's getting out of retics, and
rip.
I might be hanging on to the female because she is super complex and aberrant.
Hey, I just sent you. This is my second favorite Calatoa I ever produced. He wasn't quite as silver as his sister. I gotta find her, but
Yeah,
he had a
that's
killer back pattern.
that's part of the Chris Wilson line, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. He has siblings from that snake.
Nathan, you looking at that?
Yeah, it's kind of like that Kalatoa neck pattern that everyone expects, but throughout the entire animal.
Right.
Here, this is a shitty pick because, but this was my nicest, um, probably my nicest silver uh, Calatoa. You know, I kind of felt that there was actually a marble type gene in Calatoas, and I was never able to prove it out before my snakes ended up passing away. So that sucked. But if I can find the original male, you'll understand why I think that there was um, a potential marble-like gene.
That's
Oh,
awesome.
Nate, Lucas, I don't think you ever saw this pic. This was my other female Halmahera that was kind enough to get egg bound and died the first time I bred her.
Kind of.
Yeah.
That's some of the dark humor you need. I feel like if you've been doing this as long as you have,
Well, look at this snake.
because I have yet to have a retic die on me, and I know at some point I. Oh, that's a crazy Halmahera.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a nice snake.
Damn.
Yeah, she
Um, hear me out.
Oh, before you go, I want to show you this snake. This was a Tadori Island, and I tried to track it down before we lost importation, and I tracked it to Java, and dude had sold it to his buddy, and I really, really wanted this snake, and I just wasn't able to pull it off before we lost importation.
Yeah,
That's it. That's when it's older. This was I think like the day it was caught, and I tried like
that's
hell to get this
crazy
snake.
how the back pattern's not even connected.
Yeah, this was it like when they caught it.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and that's the island just directly below Ternate.
Yeah, damn. That almost looks like a sunfire.
Yeah, yeah, it was a really unique looking animal, like really unique looking animal.
So
And
I wanna I want to just kind of speak in a few words, well, more than a few words. I kind of want to go on a little rant and tangent here about Ternate, and just talking about my passion for them. And then after I do that, I want to get wrapping up. I think Nathan's got a question for you to kind of take us home.
okay,
So Ternate Island retics, and I mean, we can talk about Halmaheras. The issue with Halmaheras, and I'll just state this, is we only know of 1.1 wild caught in the country, which Rodney has been working with, and I think you've produced two clutches of them now,
yeah, two or three, I
two or
forget.
three. Genetic diversity is not very strong with that. So if you are going to get one,
Well, I heard
and
you can just inbreed retics as much as you want. It's totally fine.
yeah, I've heard a lot of people say that, but I'm not a fan of it.
Yeah.
So one thing that I do want to state about Halmahera is that if you get one, or let's say down the road you get a pair from Rodney, or I breed a pair, understand that the genetic diversity is not there, and so buy responsibly. Don't get F3s or F4s down the road and get a pair and continue to just inbreed them. But then going back into the ternate stuff, um, it's I personally want to emphasize on just their size. We have now we have 10 wild caughts. We had 11 wild caughts, with the biggest being about 13 and a half. And let's say Rodney's underestimating it's 14 feet. These are manageable size retics, and the color and pattern that they produce are out of this world. If you have questions about ternates, hit up Rodney. Rodney is someone who has mentored me for a while now. I've connected with him probably 2 years ago. When you call Rodney with a few questions, Rodney's the kind of person that'll keep you on the phone for an hour, giving you history lessons on all the animals that are out there. And he will give you the time of the day to talk to you, even if you don't purchase from him. It took me a year and a half to purchase an animal from Rodney before, with him still talking to me. And so, uh, with all the information that we've provided on ternates, the biggest thing that I feel like I want to say is just speaks to their size, their pattern, and their colors speak for themselves. Way better looking than most other locality animals, if not all locality animals. They've become my favorite locality, um, arguably. But um, I have animals in my garage that I'm feeding heavier than my other animals because I'm like in my head, I'm trying to prove Rodney wrong. Um, and that's just the way that my brain works, not because I want to make him look bad, but because I really want to test the size limit of ternates, and I'm unable to prove him wrong as of the limited, time that I've kept them. So don't count ternates out in regards to diversifying your animals and the color and pattern that they can provide with you while still being manageable.
Hey, I just sent you a couple pics. It's the first one is it's the first like official Karampa that documented Karampa that I think to ever come to this
Okay,
country.
yeah, I was really confused at what I was looking at while Lucas was talking there.
And the second one was a very unique solo from Pari Pari. I have so many
Ooh.
pictures, but like when I'm looking for something else, like other pictures pop up.
Yeah. Nathan, take us
And
home.
that just goes back, yeah, that just goes back to the wealth of knowledge that I think you have. So it's super important that we had you on. But yeah, just kind of rounding it off. Uh, what advice would you have for anyone that's looking to get into retics in general in 2023?
Um, well, I think I think you got to figure out what you want, like, and what you want to do. A Halmahera is more of almost like a collector item. You know what I mean?
So would you
Right.
recommend that
Y-
just people do their research and really figure out the niche they want in retics before
yeah,
they get it? Or
yeah. So I mean, if you're gonna try, the last thing you want to do is buy a bunch of snakes and think you're gonna get rich. Um, and super dwarfs. I don't know if they've been pushed so much towards that, but they've been hyped up a lot. They've been hyped up a lot, and I really think, right, look and see what you like. Like that's what I tell people. Only buy what you like. Don't buy what you think's going to sell. And I can tell you that because that's what I did. Because, I got in, I sold off all the snakes that are now selling for 10 times the amount of money that they were.
Like Ocelot.
Yeah, well, I sold my pair of double het Indo ocelots to fund getting in localities, and that was in like 2012 or 2013. I had those snakes, and I sold them because I didn't have enough money to start getting in localities, and I knew we were probably going to lose importation. I'm like, well, these fucking animals are going to go to $500 anyways when the ban hits. So why don't I get in some localities for it so we have bloodlines and and make sure we have stuff to work with. And I don't want to sound arrogant in this, but uh, you do your homework. A lot of animals, whether anyone likes to admit it or not, they get traced back to me. You know, and if I wouldn't have sold that pair of double head ocelot endos, we wouldn't have them. But I really think if you want to get into retics, um, just be realistic about it. Like how many 6 foot cages can you fit in your room, and how much time do you have, and how much money do you have to feed them? So I would sit down and do some math, and then I would get online and figure out like buy what you want to look at, not what you think is going to sell, because you're going to take care of an animal so much finer if you just enjoy that animal. If it's strictly like, oh, well, I'll get this because this is selling. Well, I got news for you. In 2 years, that animal, something else might be cool. And you might have to wait 4 years
Yeah.
before that animal's cool again and people want it. So, like Ternates, that was me selling off those other localities that work with Ternates is the worst business decision I've ever made. Easily the worst business decision I've ever made. But I didn't make it as a business decision. I made it as a, well, we're going to lose importation and interstate commerce. What do I want to work with? I wanted Ternates. So my collection is based around the fact that they weren't going to make me any money. And
I think that's great advice.
you
I
know,
mean, that's kind of what this podcast has been all about. I mean, if you're not into it just based off the passion alone, then why are you doing it in the first
Right.
place? Kind of a thing.
well,
There's
yeah,
there's there's no such thing, in my opinion, about building a business model and not owning these animals and then deciding to build a business model and get them. Like, no, love them, appreciate them, get what you love, and then go from there. That's like first and foremost.
if you want to do a
Yeah, hell,
business too.
I'm breeding these animals not because I want to get rich, but because I love these animals and maybe I'd like to cut hair a little bit less.
Because
Yeah,
I
and that's fine.
because I like the stress of breeding.
Yeah, but and that's fine. I think when people see hype around something, and there's nothing worse than the hype around a snake than a ball python. And you know what I mean? And you see so many people,
Desert
just
Ghost Clown.
yeah, yeah, you see so many people like I'm going to do this and I'm going to make all this money and the truth is $5,000 snakes don't sell that well. They just don't sell that well. And if you make 100 of them, well, you just cut them down. They're not even worth $5,000. They were only worth
Yeah.
$5,000 because it was limited supply. So, I like personally, I think the best route to go long term, in retics is, uh, are you trying to hear?
Yeah, no, I'm waiting for you to say the word locality.
Well, I'm not even going to say locality. I
Oh,
think I think it's
Yeah.
I think it's two things. I think you need super dwarfs for size, and I think you need a mix of locality for color spectrum and pattern.
right.
And then you need to pick out a couple morphs, have a couple pures, a couple morphs, and that's I think that's really all you need. I am absolutely stunned that the super dwarf market hasn't figured out that they need to breed Indo Caramel. Like Andrew's
Mhm.
bringing a super dwarf here next week to breed to my Indo Super Motley.
That you're sending me some.
Yeah, I mean it's just like I'm just amazed that people haven't like put that together yet. Because anytime you have a super dwarf het Indo, that just turned every single one of your Clark projects into an Orange Glow project.
Right.
I mean that's like you just tripled or quadrupled the value of all your animals with a single het. So I think there is a business aspect to take into consideration when you're thinking about that. But first and foremost, only get what you like to look at,
Right.
because if we lose interstate commerce again, then you better really enjoy your snakes, because they ain't making you any money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Rodney,
Absolutely.
do you mind telling our listeners where they can find you?
I'm pretty easy to find. Just look for the dumpster fire I'm causing on social media.
Oh my god.
Rodney Boalich on Facebook. You can find him at RNB Reptiles on Instagram. He also does have a Patreon, which we could provide the link down below, that he does put out some unique information that I don't think anyone else is really hitting on or touching on. Rodney, it was awesome having you on.
Yeah, thanks.
Well, and I
Anytime.
want to say one thing really quick, just on the dumpster fire thing. Like, I've seen a handful of dumpster fires within my handful of years within the Retic community. Rodney, I
Nobody
understand
starts
that
them
you're
like I
not.
do. Nobody
No, no,
starts
no.
them
I
like I do.
understand that you don't always have the greatest approach when dealing with people, and we're reptile people, so I
Yeah.
totally understand that. But in the end of the day, I've always seen just the amount of knowledge that you have, your years of experience. So I really appreciate for you just taking out the time to talk with us tonight, share a little bit of your knowledge with our viewers.
100%.
So thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Rodney, have a good night, man. It was great having you on. Thank you guys so much for listening. Don't forget, like, subscribe, comment, join our Patreon, yada, yada, yada. You guys have a good one.
All right. See you guys.
Later, man.